All right, we are live. Troy, Taylor, welcome to the Future of Fitness.
Thanks for having me on, Eric. Really appreciate being here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. As we were just talking about, I'm excited to get an update on where Tonal is. We're in Q3 2023. I've been using it for a while. I love it. I still like it.
Good to hear.
I do. I don't, I don't, hopefully you're not looking at my metrics because they're not as impressive as I hope they would be. But there's a lot of things to chat about, the world of connected fitness. And I think one of the big themes that we can kind of pull out of this and tease the listeners with is, how does connected move to intelligent fitness, right? And how Tonal is doing that overall. So let's just set the table with this, Troy, if you don't mind. I know you have an extensive background, but just give us a summary of your experience within the industry, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I tell of two stories or two parts of my career. The first 20 years, sort of undergraduate in sports science, master's degree in ex-phys. I'm British, so was over in England doing those. And during my master's degree, I started volunteering for the British Olympic swim team. Just collecting data, running blood samples, things like that. I'd love sport, was not that good as an athlete, but I found something that I really liked and really enjoyed. And so I was really fortunate. I was really at I would say the takeoff of sports science, particularly within the UK, but also later within the US and North America. And so I was fortunate to get a job straight out of my master's degree, working with some university level athletes, some British Olympic track and field sprinters, and sort of basically over the next 15 to 20 years, essentially built a career around sports science, strength and conditioning. I got to work for 3 different Olympic teams, so Team GB, Team Canada, and Team USA.
Cool.
Went to 7 Olympic Games, worked with 500 Olympians, 50 Olympic medalists. Was fortunate to be the high performance director at US Ski and Snowboard from 2015 through 2021. So like the Pyeongchang Olympic Games. So got to work with people like Lindsey Vonn and Shaun White and Michaela Schifrin and stuff like that, and running performance teams. So really, really fortunate to kind of work in that career. And while I was sort of starting back at the ski team, or I also worked for the Torino Olympics for the ski team, but I came back in 2015, was really like the integration, I would say, of really technology into elite sport. And it was really starting to take off on a much wider scale and much more accessible than it had been in the past. And like part of my job at the team was seeking out new innovations. How do we keep up with the best in the world? How do we make sure that we're standing on the top of the podium? And so I kind of like started working. I was in Park City, I still am, but a couple of hours from Silicon Valley, had a lot of sort of ski team donors that were involved in the technology space. And so really just started playing in that space. We ran technology projects to improve elite performance around things like transcranial direct current brain stimulation, HALO, back in the day. We ran projects around virtual reality. We worked with Striver. We were probably one of the first Olympic or professional teams to sort of integrate that. And so really just the thing is computational fluid dynamics, a whole bunch of projects. And I really liked the startup technology space. I started then consulting for, still sort of in my with my hat ski team job on, but for things like Comcast Sports Tech, when it was an early sort of proponent or partner in that kind of project, with Stadia Ventures and others, and so just really started immersing in my in that space. And then 2021 came around, and I'd had a Tonal. I got one for the ski team before the pandemic. We loved it. I thought it was an incredible piece of kit. Was a super fan of it, and they came around and said, "Hey, we're starting this performance innovation department, this sort of strength institute. Would you like to come and be a part of it?" And I thought it was a unique opportunity. It combined my passion of human performance. I feel like not done it all in elite sport, but done a lot in elite sport. I'd really enjoyed. I was getting a huge buzz out of the startup world and the fitness world, and so I was like, "Yeah, let's go and do that." And then 2 years later, I'm still here. It's been a roller coaster, I would say. Rocket ship for about 12 or 18 months, and definitely sort of readjustments now in terms of there. But it's been super fun, and I really enjoy the role and the opportunity, the company, and honestly, our opportunity. It's still our opportunity and our potential to really, really revolutionize how a lot of people train.
Yeah, great. I love the summary, man. And I think one of the questions that a lot of people may be thinking now, whether they know it or not, is, now that we've kind of come out of the pandemic, there was, quote unquote, pandemic darlings, right? Which make a lot of sense. The connected home fitness market was one of them. See a lot of headlines. Peloton still in the headlines constantly,
Yeah,
at
this
least in
week
our industry.
again.
Yeah, and people, God, I don't why people are fascinated by it. It's like as soon as like something comes out about Peloton, people have to like throw in their hat about like their opinion on all of it. It's like, what do you really know? Do you work at the company? No, you don't. So just, everyone has to have an opinion. Anyway, I digress. How is Tonal now coming out of the pandemic? Now things are starting to settle a little bit into what we would consider more of a normal market, right?
Yeah.
How are things going?
Yeah, they're going well. I like when I think about it, like Tonal, Ali founded in 2015, released the product very small scale at the end of 2018. It wasn't
Mhm.
really till the pandemic that we were starting to sort of ship any level of units out there and kind of things at scale. And so you've got this company that's got incredible product, game changing product, and people like me from Olympic sport and working professional, you're choosing it for their athletes, and then you pour the lighter fluid of a confines of a pandemic that thankfully we're out of, and or for the most part not an issue anymore. And then you're like, it's just all hands on deck to try and scale as quick as possible and take a chance of the opportunity that is presented in front of you. And so like that was an incredible 12, 18 months that I was involved with the company, and before around doing that. And then things change. The market dynamics have changed. That's like no one's aware of that. And then so it's like there's about 6 to 9 months, maybe 12 months, more my senior leadership team than me. They're sort of reorientating, right sizing the business for what the future looks like, not necessarily we've still got healthy growth, but not 20x growth like it was in the middle of the
Yeah.
pandemic. And so you're kind of right sizing, getting the operations and systems in places. And really, I would say for us, doing some of the things that you might have to do when you're like 1 to 2 years into a startup, around finding your niche, making sure you have your target messaging, all of those kind of incremental things. We kind of didn't have to do as much because everyone was buying our product. It didn't matter if you were resistance trained and experienced, you were a first time beginner, you were professional sports athletes, like everyone needed home fitness equipment. We were an incredible product. And so it's kind of been, it was a challenging sort of 9 or 12 months, particularly sort of back end of 2022. But sort of reorientating the business, and now we're in a solid place. We have healthy growth. We have the right size team for taking advantage. We are we have a solid plan around who our target customer is and how do we talk to them, and how do we provide value and start to understand or continue to understand what their unique challenges are and how we help solve them, more so. And I think the future is going to be different to it was in the height of the pandemic. There's still like the home fitness market is still growing. There's still more people that are working out from home kind of things. But there's also more of a hybrid environment, right? There's more people, some doing some in the gym, some at home, some people that are only doing in the gym. And so like it's really around us and other companies like us to take advantage of that opportunity and plot that forward. And I think that's what we're kind of focused on as a company.
How is the now post pandemic? How as the I guess ideal consumer model for you guys? Like who is the ideal consumer now?
Yeah.
Because that gave us unusual data, right? But what do you guys see now?
Yeah, I think whenever you're thinking about sort of target customers, it's there's a now customer and then there's a future customer. The possibilities and for Tonal are endless. Like the ability to the dynamic weights, digital weight, all of that in your home or potentially in other environments. I think there is an enormous opportunity for that. Right now, I would say that the biggest opportunity for us is in those that are like more experienced in already resistance training, that time bound. They either can't or don't want to get to the gym. They're looking for alternative solutions that are in their home. We're a relatively expensive product. Like it's not that we're, $100. So, you've got to have a fair level of investment to be interested in doing that. And so I think that's where we're orientated. People that are more fitness enthusiastic in nature, that have some experience in training, I'd say is target customer number one. You could go concentric circles out of that, and we have a lot of beginners on our platform, a lot of people that have never trained, a lot of people that are sort of, we can talk around the data on elderly populations, whether they're resistance trained or not. So there's a lot of markets where we can fit, but I think, our key target audience is that fitness enthusiastic that with already some experience in strength training. They're most likely who's going to be buying our product right now. And then over time, as we service them and we can things, they become a great advocate for us, right? Word of mouth. Those are the people that people look towards. People that were on this listening to this podcast are where people get their information from about where they're going to buy their future. So over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years or whatever, that market grows opportunities where we can start servicing and thinking about other target customers. But I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
It really does.
Rocket science.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense.
We need to sell them once. We need to sell them that Tonal is the best possible training device for them, not necessarily that resistance training is good for them. That's a conversation we can have and should have and will continue to have. And part of my role is the advocates of that. Like, I would love people just to resistance train. Use Tonal, don't use Tonal. Obviously, I'd love it if you do. I'm an advocate for resistance training. I think it's got huge benefits. I think there's a ton of research around that. So obviously, I want to grow that market eventually. I think us as a company want to grow that and help grow that. But right now, I think the key focus is on people that are already resistance training, have some experience, and how do we best service them to make that an undeniable choice that they should choose Tonal.
Yeah, and it is a great device. I mean, it's, I mix both. I was telling you, I'll go to the gym a couple days a week. I'll do my back squats and things like that, mainly because I just need to get out of the house, right? Yep. Like, but for convenience sake, once or twice a week, and then it'll increase in the winter. Tonal's great, 30 to 60 minutes. I kind of customize my own workouts, but there's a lot of great plans on there with, trainers that I follow to kind of get some new ideas in my training. But I'm a creature of habit. I kind of know the few simple things that I like to do, and I stick to them, and seem to work for now. But let's get into your, what you're tasked with doing. I guess you're, really on the performance side of things, and going from, you mentioned prior to recording, we're trying to go from connected fitness to intelligent fitness. So frame that for me. What exactly does that mean in your mind? And we'll take it from there.
Yeah, I think it's I think it's critical. Like, hardware's hard, way harder than I realized before I started working for a hardware-related company. But it's on its own. While it is unique and getting out of patent infringement, but that lots of people can create some hardware. And arguably, a reasonable number of companies can stick people on, coaches on video screens. A lot of companies in kind of things. So just that connected fitness, there's, huge advantages to something like Tonal in that space. But on its own, I don't see that as a true, long-term massive differentiator necessarily directly. What I think the opportunity in the space that I get to play in is that move from just purely connected. This is a TV screen and a really smart device, to intelligent fitness, which is really, in my kind of estimation, the blending between people like me and my team. So we got PhDs, master's degree, exercise for every personal training certification under the sun and kind of things. So the expert human performance knowledge combined with expert big data, AI, artificial intelligence, to bring to you insights and personalization that you can't necessarily get on your own, or it's very difficult to do. Something like, simply like volume tracking. It's a pain in the butt to manually do that, whether it's an Excel training, something that we just collect constantly. So we can understand that. Reps in reserve is, people may know, I think listening to this podcast will not understand the kind of idea of reps in reserve, really useful training tool for some particular kind of things. People's ability to do it, definitely when they're more beginner is not that great, gets better as they get advanced. AI, looking at velocity data, range of motion data, can start interpreting those things and bringing those insights. Hey, you should shut it down now. Or something that we find is a study came out, I think, last year out of Southampton, that I think the average person using free weights in the gym, study of thousands of people, lifted 51% of their 1RM or something. It was a relatively low. If they were doing, 20 something reps, and, obviously different goals, different weights for different goals, but on average, you're saying people are trying to maybe increase muscle mass, resistance training, and they're doing 20 reps. Maybe they're getting somewhat close to failure, but the average reps was 10. And we know 10 reps at 50% 1RM, you're going to have 6, 7, 8 reps in reserve at least. You're not really pushing yourself that hard. So it's unsurprising that people are not making gains out of doing that. They're going in, they're doing the work, some of the work, but they're not necessarily with artificial intelligence, suggested weights. You probably experienced when you use Tonal, pretty much, 92% level accuracy, pretty much every single set to get you to a 1 to 2 RAR. And so I think it's that combination. The intelligence is really capturing the brain of not necessarily me, but my team, and combining it with this, huge data set of, we were just talking things, but 150 billion pounds lifted, 3 billion reps, 25 million training sessions. And we're not talking like college age 18 to 24-year-olds, 18-year-olds to 80-year-olds, 55% male, 45% female. Like you can start applying very specific data to them. And that's I get goosebumps talking about it. That's freaking exciting. Like you can harness this big data with this performance expertise. And obviously, I don't want to underplay design, bringing that in a really exciting things, merge that together to really revolutionize how people train. So that's what intelligent strength and intelligent fitness means to me.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the use two of my happy trigger words, which is big data and AI. How do you take all that data, and you alluded to it, but how do you take all that data, all these reps, and start to make it more useful to the consumer? And at the end of the day, get them better health and performance outcomes.
Yeah, it's not easy. I'm not going to lie. It's not something like, when I turn up, oh, we got this great data set. Like, let me get in Google Sheets. I can write some R code too. Like, I kind of think, like, honestly, elite sport, that the data sets I'm working with 10, 20,000 rows, I can kind of handle. Like, I'm not bad on Tableau or Power BI. I can write some code if I had to. I'm pretty useful. When you start talking about Tonal's level of data set, you need an expert data science team, number one. And to do that. And number two, then you need to be really targeted in the questions that you ask and how you're setting that up. Yes. And that's where I and the performance team come in is partnering with the data science team to make sure we're asking the right questions to give us a chance of what the data can find for us. So like tangible examples of that, we've just been diving a little bit, just scratching the surface. And we're still relatively early stage of this, but some of our 55-year-old plus population, active aging is, a T demographic that benefits of resistance training to healthy active aging. The data on that only increases almost daily. We've got arguably the world's largest data set of 55-year-old plus trainers, and I think thousands or tens of thousands of 55 plus year olds at least. And so what we're getting there is like, okay, well, let's start with broad and then let's get specific. So like what kind of, not looking at any training methodologies, just how do people use it and what kind of adaptations do they make? So, take a subset, say 20,000 users, 55 plus. Okay, does it difference between male and female? And we actually find that in our database, just looking at the means, females start to increase more in strength than males. Maybe, I can't tell you, this is, it's not an RCT, a randomized controlled trial, while I know everything about what they did, but you might say that they start as relatively weaker. The older population, particularly females, probably less resistance trained, have more ceiling to it. But over the first year, we see sort of men increase by about 50% on average, mean, not the best case cherry pick kind of thing. Men increase by about 50%, women by about 70%. By year two, men are up to about 70% increases, and women, I think, are at 90 plus percent increases. So okay, well, they both make nice increase. Then let's take a variable, weekly consistency, let's say. How frequent do people work out? Not over 6 weeks or 8 weeks. Let's look at a year's worth of data and see how that impacts them. What we see is if in that population, people who train once a week make about a 25% increase in strength. Not bad. Once a week, pretty good kind of things. Train twice, 58%. Suddenly goes up. Well, I think it was two to 3 times a week, kind of things. More than 3 times, yeah, you get 105% or something increase. But it's not, it plateaus off. Okay, so we can see that consistency and weekly workouts does have an impact. But you can make meaningful impacts in a 55-plus-year-old with once a week. You can make some things. If you can get in twice, you're kind of doubling those gains. Pretty significant. So that's sort of an example of just diving in. Okay, so now when we design a 55-plus-year-old program, okay, how do we take some of that data? Maybe we could look at something like the exercise selections that they prefer to do, or they have done, or they get less feedback, and how do we integrate that into their training program for the masses? And then look at more of an individual level, going down the rabbit hole. But what do you, not that you're or I are 55 plus yet, get close, but not there. But like, what do I or you like to do? And also shows you have results using this big data, or people like you, 40 to 50-year-old males that have a goal of building muscle. Okay, that's my cohort. Let's dive in. Here's 75,000 of them. You know, what are the average typical changes, and how do we do that, and what are the distributions? So that's some of the ways that we can start to use that data, both to sort of inform our product development and our curriculum development. And that's one of the places where me and my team space, we partner with the coaches and sort of write a lot of the curriculum. And then the other piece is, how do we bring performance into the product? So like almost like performance principles. I can write curriculum that has progressive overload and, you know, SAD principle and X, Y, and Z. That's, I don't want to say nuts and bolts, but it's not overly difficult. Lots of personal trainers could do that. But what the team also does is, okay, we're designing a new feature. How do we make sure that we integrate something like self-determination theory, the role of autonomy in decision-making? You said you like custom workouts. That's a clear play for us. Some people want autonomy in their workouts. How do we bring that forward? We want people to have competency, so we grade the exercises on how easy. So if you're a beginner and you want autonomy, but here's you know, a more beginner exercise versus a more advanced exercise. So yeah, that's a long-winded and ranging answer, but those are some of the spaces that we play in and try and bring performance to life.
Well, I can tell, you know, as a career coach that you are, that, you know, it's exciting for you to work on this stuff, because it finally starts to answer some questions that people probably asked you a million times, right? Like, what are the best strength
what should I do?
movements for me, right? Like how many times a week should I train? How many reps should I do per set? Like all that stuff. And we've always been like, well, you know, generally from what I've seen so far and some of the things I've read, I would suggest this. But now you're getting access to real data over a lot of different users, right? And that I could tell you're excited about it.
Yeah, you really get to understand. Like, again, like if you've never met someone, you're a personal trainer. I think if you're a decent personal trainer, at least my bias is, I'm going to go with an evidence-based approach of well, this is generally what the consensus says. You told me you want to build muscle, so well, I know Brad Schoenfeld's done a study that says it needs to be, you know, at least 4 sets, maybe as many as 12 to 20 sets. And Stu Phillips just came out with a paper and a meta-regression that says probably 3 times a week might be slightly better than 2 times a week, or whatever it might be, you know, kind of there. And we start and we apply it, and then we try and, okay, well, how did that go? And we try and measure responses, and we titrate and tweak it. And, okay, you like to do this. Or we ask you a bit of your history. What have you done in the past that worked? And try and build off there. We get to do all of those things. Plus, look at this, we get to refine it a lot level. At that first level, rather than being very broad, we can be a little more specific. Maybe not individual, you know, use specific right away, but we can know, okay, 40 to 50-year-old males, we recover a little less fast than 20 to 30-year-old males. Virtually all of the research studies in hypertrophy is in 20 to 30-year-old males. You know, how do females either, you know, postmenopausal or during perimenopausal, how does that change? We can ask questions of that. So it gets us like closer to the right answer earlier. Still build it off evidence-based fitness principles. And it's not like things change dramatically, but maybe training frequency for 40, 50-year-olds should maybe be a little less. Does the data suggest that? And then we can then start as thing. And then what we get to do is learn from you. And the good thing about the data, it never forgets, right? It knows what you did every single time. You know, I just hit 4.5 million, nearly 5 million pounds on Tonal.
Nice.
I train very frequently for not very long. So I average like 3 workouts a day, all of which are less than 10 minutes. Exercise slack a lot because my gym's behind in those barn doors. I go in, I'm working here. I got 10 minutes between a Zoom call, bang. I rep out a warm-up set, couple of top sets or something like that, move on with my day. But other than that, Tonal knows every single one of those reps that I've done. It knows the velocity at 50 hertz, 50 times a second of every one of those reps that I've done. So it knows if I'm having a good day or a bad day. Now, the opportunity for us is then how do we bring that to products in moving forward? It's not that easy to do that, but that's the opportunity for sure.
How do you, and this is a selfish question, how do you do that? Do you customize, do you build a custom workout within the app and then you just go perform it on the machine? Is that how you do when you do the fitness
I do various
dataset?
different things. So I just finished Extreme Accumulation, which is one of our newly released programs. It's custom by Tonal. So it's actually something that I and Joe, the coach, designed together, and it's kind of a hybrid pattern. What we're seeing is like you talked about how you do customs, and more advanced users like to do more custom and free lift kind of type experiences. I wouldn't say that's across the board. It's probably, it's more 50-50 in that population, where it's more 80-20 in more beginner or intermediate populations in terms of the coach guided stuff. So there's a couple of different ways that I do those. Is number one, I'll just go in and then I'll start a guided workout and I just pause it. I do the first set and then warm up and things, and I pause it. It will stay paused. It will run in the background, for multiple hours before kind of things. I go back in. As long as my wife didn't go and work out and, pick something else, I just hit restart and go again. Do a quick body weight warm up to make sure I'm not, doing anything crazy, or hit recovery weights or warm up weights on the option to make sure I get set in and go back and forth. I also do, a bunch of custom workouts that I just myself write. They're either short 10-minute exercise snack kind of sessions. So I have this is my 10-minute chest workout. This is my 10-minute back workout. This is my 10-minute arm workout. And I just have a whole bunch of those. We also have a bunch of quick fits that you can kind of get through in 10 to 15 minutes and just go in there. And then other times I just go in a free lift. I go in, I pick the move I want to do. I do a warm up set. And then my favorite way to favorite, I don't know, is a painful thing, but I select burnout mode, which, if you don't know, Tonal is kind of like a drop set. It basically, as soon as you stop or slow down dramatically, it reduces the weight automatically. So it's like a drop set with never putting the dumbbell down. I add eccentric mode. So we know, eccentrics have a strong association with increases in strength, potentially. Our data, we've done some data on that, and we see, actually, I think it's around, don't quote me on it. I quote myself on it, but I think people that use dynamic weight make about 10% greater gains than those that don't. It's 10 to 15% kind of thing. So if you use dynamic weight mode, so what chains, eccentric, those types of things, you make bigger gains. But I put eccentric mode on, put burnout mode on. I also put chains mode on, so you can do chains and things. So it overloads the eccentric, and then it gives me extra sort of power development on the content, and do one set to failure. And just rep out as much as I can. And I think it's like 90 seconds to 2 minutes if I'm hurt. And I feel I get a huge stimulus out of that one free lift workout. So I think that's part of the opportunity. It's just adaptable, right? You can make it work for you. And the fact that it's in your home means that, and honestly, changing weights kind of sucks. I have a squat rack behind me too. Like, I also still squat sometimes, not very often, but I do. I hate changing weights. It's like my pain in my butt loading up the biceps. I did it for 20 years, but now I'm like, why can't it just automatically change for me? Or getting in position without weight on, weight off type kind of stuff. I'm like, this really sucks. But there's still some good things about it. It's not that it's bad. I'm not against resistance training or free weights, but certainly some advantages of doing that and being able to do these really time efficient training. So one of the big things for me that I really like.
I love it. And thanks for geeking out with me on that. Here's kind of a picture that I like to paint in my mind. You can let me know how realistic it is in what time frame. But one of the things, in coaching and writing programs for anybody from, an athlete who's probably going to have more coherence to the program than maybe somebody with, a more complicated life. But we can have the best programs written, right? But practicality comes into play. People travel, people are stressed out, people have whatever going on in their life. They have to miss a session, things like that happen. So, when I look at where training can be and the personalization of it all, it's all these different data inputs. And I had Ian Mullane on it from Kimi.ai, and he was talking from the health club perspective, all the data inputs. So wearable data, sleep data, HRV, all the stuff that we can do to kind of make it a more dynamic and adaptable to the trainee as time goes, and more forgiving, I guess, is really what I'm trying to say, is we can still keep people on track even though something slipped off due to, I don't know, like right now my dog's bothering me, right? Like she needs to go out.
Yeah.
So like,
My kids
that
started
means
back
you're,
at school, and
yeah, what,
I normally work out first thing in the morning, so that has
totally.
disrupted my morning schedule. So
Yeah. And I presume
how do I
machine
adapt
learning,
to those?
yeah, and machine learning and AI have to play a part in that. So we're when I paint that picture, how far away do you think we are, and what part is tonal playing in something like that?
I think like many things, I think it's you will see there's already pieces of that built into our programming, into others, into whether it's Whoop or kind of other people with these large data sets that I think maybe not obviously being driven by the data set. So I think it's already there. And I think you're going to see a trickle of that continuing steadily over the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months type kind of time frame to be where it's a full on flood of how we utilize either individual data sets like tonal data or combinations of data sets around that. Like, I borrow a lot from the elite sport world because that's
Mhm.
where I'm from, and they tend to be more on like, there's a lot of money and a lot of things at stake for them. So the idea of like what we'd call like an athlete management system in elite sports, that'd be like a smarter base for anyone that's sort of used to that, or Conduct or Edge 10, or there's a couple of other of these bigger kind of things that basically they're data aggregation opportunities. And what most of them rely on is people like me and a team of like experts, a strength and conditioning coach, nutrition, dietitians, psychologists, and sort of bringing these disparate data sets together in a storage place where we can kind of at least manually and visualize them. And I think what we're seeing and what we will see is that becoming more consumer focused, and we're already doing that. I don't think we're that far away from it. The individual data sets and responding to that, I think, can happen relatively quickly. And so I think, I'm not giving any product roadmap stuff here. This is not there, but it's not beyond the realms of possibility that someone like Tonal could look at your first couple of reps of a training session and auto-regulate the rest of that training session based on velocity, range of motion type kind of things. And so you could
Totally.
use it almost immediately. We're not there yet. And I'm not saying that's a product that necessarily is even that far away, but something like that. Or Whoop, it sees that you didn't sleep as well, or didn't sleep as well. How would that impact on, should you take a recovery day? Is it things like what we do in elite sport a lot is we sort of triangulate 3 different data sets. So you've got this kind of, how do you feel self-rating? Because that's important,
Mhm.
right? Kind of
Yeah.
things. There's this sort of performance data set, like how are you performing? And then there's this like physiological marker. Did you jump higher? Is your HRV lower? Like something that's around that. And generally they point 2 of the 3 in the same direction, and one's like over here. Like often we don't feel that great, but we can perform. And sometimes we feel great and we don't perform very well. And so I think that kind of framework is probably how it will evolve. Yeah, and I don't think we're that far away, at least from the individual data sets, and utilizing that to make more responsive training. We kind of do that with something like suggested weights. If your first set, if I suggest normally when you bench press with 120 pounds for 10 reps. Today, if you came in, you selected 10 reps, and I do 120 pounds, and you only get 8 out, and then you reach fail, spotter mode has to kick in or something like that, I will reduce the weight for the next set.
Hmm.
It's a relatively basic, but it's a form of auto-regulation training, sort of already kind of being sort of brought into that. I think we'll build along that, and others will build upon that. And then, the other opportunity is the multiple data sets, and how do you handle that? And I think we're not that far away. But it's going to be relatively slow, maybe for a year or so, and then the floodgates will open around how we do that. And a lot of it is less on the technical side of doing it, a lot more on the UX side of how do you explain that to consumers in their home in a way that makes sense, is not overwhelmingly difficult, complex. Like, data's awesome. Like, I love it. It sounds like you love it. I'm guessing much of this audience, like, more is almost better, but your average Joe at home doesn't, like, it can be too much. And so how do you
Yeah.
design it in a way where it's like the right data contextualized to you, what's important and relevant to you? And that's actually where I think more of the challenge in that space kind of things is, how do we surface it in a way that kind of makes sense for you?
Well, we tend to get run away. We run away as an industry with all the features and the possibilities and the performance, and then we tend to miss the mark sometimes on, well, what is the actual consumer, right? Of
Totally.
what do they
And
need?
and
Like
some of
they
it,
don't need
like
all that.
it probably some of it can be hidden. Like something like we dived into our database. This was a while ago, but we were like, what are markers of consistency? We know consistency is important. Like research from, I don't know, what is it, Paul Bedford, maybe in the early 2000s on
Mhm.
gym membership and how much you must go, like, you know, and what's associated. So we know consistency is like a key factor to lifetime value and just staying engaged in fitness and whether you do that. So we kind of looked at ours and what are like some of the drivers of or associate strong associations with higher levels of consistency. And it's like we start to see, you know, generally the earlier you work out in the day, the more consistent you are. Not that everyone should work out in the morning, doesn't work, but it basically less things come up in your day that can derail it is my interpretation of that data. We see that if you have a set time window to when you work out, then you're more likely to be more consistent. And we start to see fluctuations in that is a lead indicator of you might be becoming disengaged. And we see some associations between that and like ratings. So when you start to see this noise in how consistent your data are, your rating of programming or quality and enjoyment trying to decreases a little bit. And a lot of this is building off like the research evidence, and we're just showing it in real world to some extent. But it's like, what were those pre-markers? So like, okay, maybe you normally work out at 8 a.m. and for the last X period of time, 14 days, it's suddenly, you know, you used to have a standard deviation of plus or minus 10 minutes. And now it's plus or minus of 25 minutes or something like a bigger win. You're still working out. There's no decrease in frequency, but the time's gone up and your ratings have gone down. What can I, as an intelligent device, can I give you a push notification? Can I ask you, you know, some in the app or on the trainer, is something going on? Can I make you think around what is it? Is it maybe my kids went back to school and it's really messing up my training and I need to get back in the habit? And maybe I forward you an education article on how to build healthy habits, or here's, you know, Atomic Habits, but read this, or something around that. Like it's like identify something in data, tell that to the user in a way that makes sense to them, and provide a solution option alternative to try and course correct that kind of movement. I think that's really exciting because like if you just had gym swipes, you wouldn't know that, or you know, you start seeing decreases in velocity of training. Maybe you're getting overtrained. You know, you're moving slower. Maybe we should suggest a recovery period. Things like that.
Do you guys do you have any initiatives or plans, and obviously share what you can, for more commercial use out of the home, right? And I know you and I had talked about whenever we first discussed this podcast, which was months ago, about involving the coach and the trainer, maybe having the opportunity for a trainer to customize the programming for a specific client, have that one-on-one connection, but it's done remotely somehow. You know, so how are you looking at kind of maybe expanding into the broader industry overall?
Yeah, I'll tackle the first part of it because it's related, but maybe separate first, and then the second part around more commercial side. So number one, with the personal training industry as a whole, like we see this, like if you went on the official Tonal community on Facebook, or you go in any of the communities, you can think there are tons of personal trainers that are programming people for Tonal. Something that we never really set out to do, and not something we really facilitated until fairly recently. You know, you'd have to. People are intuitive have great workarounds, right? They'd log in, share their app details, go in, create a program. It would show up on their trainer because we didn't allow sharing. We did, I think, since we first had this conversation, we did release custom sharing. So you can now share. There's a little send item. You can text message it to them, then it will load up their workout automatically in their app. So there's a facilitation of ways that you can get a workout. You could, you know, I really love Eric's back workout. You just text it to me, add it to Facebook or whatever, and there's a link and I can download that and automatically do that. So that's sort of number one. But number two, like, yeah, we saw that there's a ton of people training around that. And I think we've spoken to some of the major accreditors of personal training, and they're telling us something like 50 or so percent of currently people getting certified post pandemic don't ever plan to work in a big box gym full time, or necessarily. They plan to work in a hybrid or remote environment, or part time in a big box and part time, or a boutique fitness, or whatever it might be. But there's this new world. And I think that's where we should be playing, and something that we will be actively seeking to do. And I think for us, it's a lot of understanding what additional tools do we need to build, what would help facilitate that. If you're there's maybe some theory. If you're a really bad personal trainer, you should be scared by Tonal, because we can, if you're just doing generic programming, we can do all of that too. And we're, overall a monthly lot less hourly wage than necessarily some personal training. If you're really good at your job in the human connection side, we're a great tool for you. We can help you be more efficient and more effective. No longer do you have to track volumes and loads, or no longer do you have to do certain things on suggested weights. You can spend the time things that you care about, building bespoke programs for that, and then engaging and interacting with the client. Those are the things that really bring value, in my experience, to that experience. So we're a great tool for that. So that's something we will continue to sort of integrate more into. And we're part of my remit is actually to actively work on that space, which I think is hugely exciting, because I think there's a real opportunity of how we do that, and something that we're actively seeking. So that's part one, and then part two is sort of commercial settings, and that's a bit of a we've done some. I would say, like, truthfully, we've kind of dabbled in it. We've got 50 or so hotels, hospitality kind of things that have tonals, and people love them. Members, it's a great benefit to type doing it. You travel, you can book a hotel, you never miss your workout. A lot of our members, that once they train on Tonal, they don't want to train on free weights. You and I still do some free weights, but a lot of them are like, I want my stats tracked. I want all of the benefits of doing that. So that's a benefit there. We've done a couple of like corporate wellness stuffs. We've got some tonals in Nike's gym in their headquarters in Oregon, and a few other places, but not dramatically. I think what we're looking at is, like, we're not going to be with our current device in, Equinox, Lifetime Fitness. I'm not dropping names. We're not having conversations. But our device is not really built for that, like, really high usage facility. It's not where we're at. But boutique fitness, personal training studios, that's a space that we'd like to explore as part of that kind of continued work. So if anyone's listening that wants to kind of think about installing things, it's something that we're open and actively pursuing, or looking at pursuing, is how we do that as part of an overall broader strategy about engaging with the fitness industry as a whole.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine you can make a very space efficient boutique setting, right? That you could plop in like urban settings, and with a small footprint, low overhead, and create a unique experience around Tonal, not Tonal, weighting, holding the weight of the entire experience, but something around it. But yeah, interesting. It's something
I think there's an opportunity, particularly in that small personal training boutique kind of space around, whether it's only tonals or there's tonals plus other equipment. Like, I often I have a half rack, and so I kind of put my half rack against the wall where my tonal is, and you kind of got this combination. It's like no additional space, but I've got all of this additional functionality. Somehow I now add eccentric mode to my back squat. Is kind of an interesting kind of combination. So you can play around with opportunities around how you might do that. I think it's more in Europe than the US right now, but there's this popped up of these like solo gym type kind of things that came out of the pandemic. Not everyone wants to go back to it more of maybe a gym environment, or don't have the space for a home gym, but don't necessarily want crowding, waiting for equipment. So there's more pod type structure and ways that we might fit into that kind of environment. And then, it's that hybrid approach, right? For the personal trainer, I don't want to take business from you, going to them twice a week. There's still huge value. You should still do that. What I want to help you do is be more efficient for the other 2 times a week that you want and need them to train, and they're not currently. Or if they are, you don't know what they're doing. You can't track it. You have things, you've got no details, so you're not getting the outcomes that you want. And what happens after, the first 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks, that personal trainer client gives up because they're not seeing results because they haven't really done the work that you told them to. We can be a great tool for that other 2 times a week, whether you use it in your gym or don't, or you just program at home, and then it becomes the best of both worlds.
Yeah. Fascinating. kind of maybe, just in a more broad conversation, like when you look at our market, our industry, what has you really excited right now, Troy? Like from a technology standpoint, from trends, from, and I like for me, I'm really excited about uh, seeing more women engage in strength training. And I'm not just talking about like, here's a couple of dumbbells. I'm talking about like squat racks, like full depth squats. I see it in my gym. I've seen the trends. I see the data. It's really cool. So, just speaking as Troy Taylor, what gets you fired up right now?
Yeah, I agree. I think the increasing in women doing strength training with moderate to heavy resistance rather than just
Mm-hmm.
2 to 4 pound dumbbell. I love. I agree. I work with Stacey Sims.
Oh,
She's
cool.
a PhD out of New Zealand that is very much into female training. I think like her slogan is "lift heavy shit." Excuse my language, but like I absolutely love that, and I think that's an awesome trend, and I hope to see that continue. And in our data, we are seeing it continue. In that extreme accumulation program, which is one of the hardest programs Tonal ever produced. Like you look in our OTC in our community, and the amount of like females are in there. I just crushed my biggest weight ever. I think we're slowly have broken down or continuing to break down the stigma around if I lift, I'll get bulky and like kind of things to the health benefits of lifting as well as the aesthetic benefits are likely to be getting bulky and kind of thing. So I'm also really excited about that. I think the other one is that active aging community. My
Hmm.
parents are in their 70s. They live in Britain, so they don't have a Tonal yet. But I see it. My gran is 101. Awesome to live that long. That's great. But I'd say
Wow.
like up until her 90s, she was pretty active and physical. She came to our wedding when she was in her mid 90s, like flu country kind of things. But the last 5 years, man, it's been pretty tough. Like the falls, the
Yeah.
breaks, the sarcopenia, the reduction in muscle mass. And that's on the extreme end. But like I see my parents now who are still physically active. I do not want them to lose it. And I think we are with that sort of the amount of research that's around that, and hopefully whether it's tools like Tonal or traditional gyms or personal whoever, but like the role of that, like going for a walk for 30 minutes is not enough for you to live the like you might live a long time, but you're not going to have a high health span unless you resistance train. And we're having data. Joso Gurgit did a couple of meta analyses the last couple of years. Like people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s still make, or 60s and 70s definitely still making increases in muscle size, hypertrophy, and people in their 90s making increases in strength. Which I'm excited about that because I think that like I'm getting older personally, but like the population in Western world is getting older. And I think that's the more that we can push on that and help that and facilitate that and show the benefits and educate around that and bring tools, whether it's Tonal or something else that help facilitate that. I think that's got huge benefits because, yeah, who wants to live to 100 if the last 20 years you can't get out of your bed or your room or your apartment? And that's strength, right? That's strength and power, ability to walk upstairs, get out of a chair. So yeah, that's probably where I have the biggest passion, which is funny because if you'd asked me like 4 years ago, like, Olympic sports,
Right.
probably, if you'd asked me, I'm like, what's your next job going to be? I'd be like, oh, probably NBA. That's kind of like the path, the like kind of things. And like, and now I'm genuinely more excited about some 7-year-olds getting 50% stronger than I would be probably winning another, helping an athlete win an Olympic medal or an NBA championship. But I think, yeah, I don't know, maybe that's just age speaking, but just changes of priorities. I think there's huge opportunity there. And as an industry, as fitness professionals, like that they're the wealthiest population, so they can pay for fitness professional services, whether it's in person or something like Tonal, and they're in desperate need of it. And I think there is a growing understanding of its importance, which is exciting, and we need to capitalize on that.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of people who are in the active aging or serve that demographic who would be cheering for what you just said because they agree. And
Yeah,
I think it's actually fairly common career arc for people
yeah,
like yourself within the coaching industry who start out at high performance and they think pro athletes, it's all I want to work with the rest of them. Get into it and you're like, you know what? I can do more good over here.
yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's more
Honestly, that was
fulfilling.
the opportunity of Tonal was really like incredible piece of hardware. Love the kit and the kind of things. But like I've worked with, these incredible athletes. I've had teams of like 30 or 40 performance specialists working with, you know, 100 athletes or something like this incredible ratio that you just don't get. It's like, it's cool. But the ability of Tonal to impact on hundreds of thousands and millions of people, you're like, okay, that's kind of really cool. Maybe from an egotistical standpoint, but you like, let's apply some of this knowledge and these opportunities. Like, it needs to be contextualized, but apply them to a much broader population.
Awesome. Last question for you, Troy, is like, at Spirit of Collaboration, like what are you looking for right now? How can we help you as a community?
Yeah, I think we probably touched on it in that sort of personal training and fitness industry stuff. It's not been like, truthfully, it's not been a big part of Tonal's business plan or even sort of philosophy. We sort of we went to ACSM and NSCA maybe last year before, on some sponsor type stuff. We did commission some research. We were back at ACSM this year presenting some of our research and results of that research. But really, it's now about how do we integrate with personal trainers from I think for your industry specifically, and how do we integrate with the fitness industry, and if anyone's interested in doing that, I think that's pilots and opportunities that we're looking for, whether it's more in the boutique personal fitness studio type kind of install kind of opportunities around that, or it's more on sort of how would we engage with some of the larger organizations, if certifiers or credentials. I think that those are definitely, I think, as a community, I think we're open to that conversation. Would like to have that conversation with people that are actively listening. Obviously, it needs to make sense to both sides to do that, but that's a conversation we'd actively look at, as well as some of maybe those that are on the more, I would say, older participation sports side. Golf, tennis, there's not that many people playing football in their 20s, 30s, 40s if they're not in a college or pro career, and we've got a lot of college and pro careers. But in those sports, if you work with a sport that's sort of in that more, active, I wouldn't say aging community, but like adult population sports and mass participation, that's also a space that's kind of interesting to us.
Yeah, that's fair. Awesome. Well, hey, if people want to get a hold of you, or if there's anywhere that you'd like to go them online, have them go online.
Yeah.
I know you're pretty solid on LinkedIn. Where would you like them to go?
Yeah, the two, more LinkedIn's probably the easiest from a more professional kind of things, and it's just Troy Taylor. I don't know what the numbers are, but you can find me and you'll see my picture. I do have an Instagram account that I only started in December. I posted, I think, every day between December and March, and then didn't post again since, but I will reactivate. And that's Strength Science Troy. And that's very much like evidence-based fitness research type stuff. Lots of Tonal examples, but other training too. But just sort of bring science there. But yeah, it is in my to-do list to restart that fairly soon on a less frequently basis, so I don't burn myself out. Much like someone starting a new fitness routine in January, I was the guy in the gym that hit it every day for 30 days, and then you didn't see me after February 1 again. It was a little burnout. I will have a more steady approach to my Instagram coming in the next month or two.
Yeah. I always talk about content creation as it's like a good aerobic training. It's got to be repeatable and sustainable. And,
I had 10 years of ideas and thoughts that I'd never shared because I wasn't really on social media. I was like, right, let's go. Yeah. I was like, that's like 4 months worth of content. Now what? I'm like, it's kind of a lot of work to do this. I didn't realize.
It's a lot of work, brother.
I had to push my workouts. So I was like, no one wants to see that. So I'll probably have to come up with some other ideas. But I've got a backlog now of maybe once or twice a week posts that will be more sustainable.
Cool. Well, Troy, thank you so much for joining me. I like the initiatives you're doing. Obviously, you're a lot of fun to talk to. You have a lot of great insights on the industry. And I'd love to have you back on, and we can maybe get an update in a year or so.
Love to do that. Thank you so much for having me on. Appreciate it, Eric.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, Troy Taylor.